good afternoon from Israel. My name is Roy Zeibel. I'm ADRES' co-CEO, and today we're going to have a session about process validation in light of the new PDA technical report number 60, Process Validation, a Lifecycle Approach. And it will be presented by ADRES's president, owner, and founder, Mrs. Rivka Zeibel, who is also my mother. The webinar will take about 50 minutes and we'll have time for Q&A at the end of the webinar. So please feel free to ask questions. You can see at the bottom of your screen where you can put your Q&As and we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. You also have the chat if you want to write us anything during the webinar. But again, if you have questions, please use the Q&A button. And the webinar's presentation will be sent to you in a few days, and the webinar is recorded and will be uploaded to our blog on our website, where you can find our previous webinars that we already held, the recording and the summary of the webinars. In the beginning, I just want to say a few words about ADRES and what we do. We are a consultancy, a regulatory and quality consultancy that works with startups, supports their activity. We help them from the very beginning, the regulatory strategy, their planning, and we take them all the way through the preclinical stages and the clinical stages, including QA, CMC, preclinical program, clinical program, and we help them interact with the regulatory authorities in Israel, in the US, in the EU. And today our focus is, of course, on process validation and CMC, which is a big part of our activity. So please, Mother Rivka, the stage is yours, and I hope all of you enjoy the webinar, and good luck.
Thank you, Roy, and thank you for all those who joined us for this webinar this afternoon. Actually, the PDA technical report is a revision of the technical report that was published after the FDA and EMA published their first guideline about process validation, in which they discuss the concept of process qualification and continued process verification. And the current version actually expands a lot more about that. The TR60 frames process validation talks about this process validation as a life cycle, not a one-time event. It describes the purpose and scope of the process and when it applies, and discuss the three different stages that all those who are involved in process validation are familiar with. The stage 1, which is the process design, stage 2, process qualification, and stage 3, continued process verification. It helps us to identify the cross-cutting principles, which are scientific evidence, risk management, control strategies, statistics, documentation, and knowledge management. Recognize how process validation outputs support change management and continuous improvement. So we will go through all those aspects and expand on each one of them. There are slides in which there are citations from the technical report itself. So process validation is, as you know, a structured evidence system. It starts with process understanding, confirms commercial performance, and keeps learning during routine manufacture. Those who are working in startup companies are most probably in stage 1, and as you continue the development of your product towards the submission, the approval of the product. You will go through a stage 2 and then to stage 3. The main objective of the technical report is to provide to the pharmaceutical industry with the most current guidelines available and summarize in a very detailed document the principles of process validations through the life cycle of the product. As a reader, you can find the most relevant regulatory requirements and expectations. You don't need to read all 162 pages of the guideline in order to get answers to your questions and needs at different points. So I, for instance, was interested to understand what the statistic section talks about. So I look for that and review it. If you are in early stages, then you will benefit of reading the sections that are relevant to early stages and then continue through the entire process. Of course, in order to get the technical report, you need to be either a member of PDA or you need to, you can buy it online, the technical report. It includes examples of how to define for different process steps, critical process parameters. There are a few pages which detail different process parameters and the different equipment and the parameters that are being measured during the process, and guide you on what is the meaning of the process parameter, critical process parameter, critical quality attribute. There is a very detailed section about statistical tools and how relevant they are in the different stages through the life cycle of the product. So as I said at the beginning, it is the exercise which will be with you through the entire life cycle of the product. Here is a list of the documents which were summarized and that the technical report addressed them, and there are the basis for this very detailed technical report. As I said, you have here documents from the EU, like Annex 1. Those who work in aseptic processes are very familiar with Annex 1. We have the Annex 11, which is about computerized systems, and the equivalent FDA guideline, the 21 CFR Part 11. FDA guidance on data integrity and compliance, quality guidelines by the ICH, and we will see reference to the ICH guidelines through the entire document because that is really one of the main bases for this document. So why process validation matters? Why do we need to worry or actually understand what it is and what it says? So first of all, the regulatory expectation. EMA, FDA, and other regulatory authorities consider process validation an essential element in assurance of drug quality and link it to GMP expectations. Patient protection. What PV does is it connects process knowledge and controls to the ability of consistently deliver the intended product quality. And the business value, a life cycle PV creates a disciplined basis for innovation, improvement, and post-approval change. So those that are in the industry, like myself, more than 30 years, we were used to the idea of 3 consecutive batches pass. That means that your process is validated. And actually that changed with the guidelines of the FDA and EMA in 2011, around that time, when they said 3 batches is not enough. 3 batches may give you an idea of the consistency of your process, but that is not enough in order to consider the process to be validated. And therefore, now we are moving to control and continuously verify the process. And I just copied from the technical report the FDA definition of process validation versus the EMA definition. You will see that there are some differences, but both mean the same. FDA says that the collection and evaluation of data from the process design stage through commercial production, which establishes scientific evidence and that the process is capable of consistently delivering quality products. And the focus is on the word consistently. And EMA definition is that is a documented evidence that the process operated within established parameters, can perform effectively and reproducibly, and produce a medicinal product meeting its predetermined specifications and quality attributes. So it's different words, but both are saying the same. So I go back to this, did 3 batches pass to do we understand, control, and continuously verify the process? And if we collect all the data through the development, the design stage, through commercialization of the product, I believe that we will be able at the end of the process say, yes, I understand my process, I understand my product, I have the correct controls, and therefore I can move forward with the product to the market and ensure that that product will be safe to the end users, which usually are patients. The purpose and scope of TR60 is it's a global reference for PV lifecycle, PV process validation, approaches for drug substance and drug product manufacturing. It applies to new and existing commercial processes. There is a section about how do you apply the principles of process validation and continuous process verification to processes which were developed before those requirements existed. And it applies to sterile or non-sterile pharmaceuticals, biologics, API, radiopharmaceuticals, veterinary medicines, and drugs constituents of combination products. It is not intended to replace specialized validation guidance for ancillary operations such as cleaning, aseptic process simulation, or sterilization. One of the things that we focus on when we assist a client to develop the process validation protocol and studies, we also add a list of what we call additional process parameters that need to be validated, which are not part of the typical process validation. For instance, as it is mentioned here, the aseptic process simulation, it's only relevant to aseptic processes, meaning a process in which you manufacture your product in on aseptic conditions without having a final sterilization. So that will be a specific protocol which will discuss that, but we will, when we move forward, we will see the validation master plan. And in the validation master plan, you will include not only the process validation, but also all additional studies that you need to conduct at least once in the life cycle of the product. And it's not only the aseptic process simulation, it is the cleaning validation and other aspects of the process. The document was revised in order to align with current regulatory expectations and life cycle thinking. So some definitions: the process validation, PV, is a collection, evaluation of data from process design through commercial production to establish scientific evidence of consistent quality. CQA, critical quality attribute that should be within an appropriate limit, range, or distribution to ensure desired product quality. Critical quality attribute also is a quality attribute that if it is not within its range or distribution, it may adversely affect a process parameter. So, and vice versa. Process parameter whose variability can impact a CQA and therefore should be monitored and controlled. It means that if I have a process, and I have an example from an audit that we conducted recently to a manufacturing facility. They defined that the pH of the fermenter is a critical process parameter, meaning that the fermenter during the fermentation stage should be at a specific pH range. And therefore, the pH is a critical quality attribute. And they actually had a failure in the pH measurement during the fermentation, meaning the pH was not within its range. And although it was defined as a critical quality attribute and that the fermentation is a critical process parameter, they tried to argue that it doesn't matter. And I told them, look, it matters. You defined that you need to have a pH at a range in order to be successfully in your fermentation. So it matters, and if it was my product, I would tell you, I don't agree that you use this fermentation to manufacture a validation batch. So that is the way that you need to look at those definitions. How do they impact the final product, and whether any failure of them will actually disqualify your validation campaign. And I will try to provide you more examples during this webinar. Control strategy are planned controls derived from current product process understanding to assure performance and quality. So control strategy means a series of controls that you defined based on your history, your development of the process, the analytical and statistical analysis that you have conducted to the data that you have. And based on them, you defined which are the most relevant controls that you need to ensure are available during the manufacturing process, during the testing, to assure the performance and quality of the process and the product. PPQ is the process qualification, commercial scale confirmation that process design performs and is expected with qualified systems and trained personnel. This is what we can consider the equivalent to what we called in the past 3 consecutive batches. And we will discuss that further. And the CPV, continuous process verification, that is the assurance that routine production remains in a state of control. If someone, I will just remind you, if you have any question or something is not clear, please either mention it in the Q&A, and if it is something that you feel you need an answer now, write a comment and we will try to address that. Life cycle philosophy. So that is actually the continuous GMP evolvement. We know that in the GMP we have different phases, and as you move forward with the manufacturing of the development of your product, then you will expand your GMP. So in parallel to that, you also design and develop your process. The beginning of that is the design phase. From the design phase, you have a process, you have the materials that are needed, you have the facility that you need to also qualified, you have the analytical methods that you have to develop, and from there at stage 2, you move to the manufacturing phase, in which you manufacture the process, the batches for the qualification of the process. And the stage 3 is the stage in which you move to the commercial phase, in which you send the product for distribution and to the patients, and you also submit your regulatory file. So this life cycle spans initial development, registration, commercial production, post-approval changes, and discontinuation. All those ICH guidelines are relevant to support the development, risk management, quality systems, life cycle management, continuous manufacture, and analytical procedure development. The life cycle may be iterative rather than strictly linear as new product process knowledge emerges. So I may develop a process with an idea in my mind on what is that, what does that process mean, and then during the development of it, I realized that there are areas in which I need to improve, to change, and that's why, sorry, I just lost something in my, sorry, just 1 second, I will correct it. Okay, I'm back here, sorry for that. So that is the idea that during the verification phase, there might be areas for changing and improving the process itself. Just lost my, okay, now I found that, sorry. So the TR60 uses FDA 3-stage nomenclature and also aligns with EMA traditional enhanced terminology. And we will go through each one of the stages and understand what they mean and what they include. So stage 1 is the design and understanding of the process, establish critical quality attributes, critical process parameters, critical material attributes, and the control strategy. Stage 2 is the development of quality systems and confirm the commercial process through PPQ. When I say quality, the definition of the quality systems, I mean that at this stage, when we get to stage 2, and we want to initiate the process performance qualification, we need to be at the stage of full GMP, because those batches that I manufacture through the PPQ are batches that potentially should go to the commercialization, or definitely will serve for the clinical studies if you want to have some advantage of manufacturing batches for a purpose. The stage 3 is the stage in which you monitor routinely your manufacturing process, your outcomes, your analytical methods parameters, and respond to signals to maintain control. And when we get to stage 3, we will talk a bit more about respond to signals. What does it mean? So I first go to stage 1. The understanding from stage 1 brings me to development of stage 2 and performance of stage 2, and what I have learned from stage 2 and the outcome of the PPQ will help me to move forward to stage 3, which is the monitoring stage, which is also divided into stages 3A and 3B. So let's start with process design. During the process design, I want to establish quality target product profile and identify critical quality attributes, define the manufacturing process and process description, development of qualify, validated appropriate analytical methods, use risk, through all that, use of risk assessment to identify potential critical process parameters and or materials that the range within I can operate in each one of the process steps. One of the things that I emphasize is that risk assessment is a key tool in order to develop the manufacturing process and also to keep the manufacturing process under control. And you should use that from the beginning of the design of the process. Start with the risk assessment of your initial process and then add more parameters and more knowledge to your risk assessment as you continue the development of the process. At the end of the stage 1, we should create a process design report and develop a process validation master plan inputs for PPQ readiness. So we start with quality target product profile, and we end with critical quality attributes and a control strategy. The QTPP is based on ICH Q8. It considers patient needs and reflects the core quality information. It talks not only about the quality attributes, but also how the quality attributes interact with, for instance, the indication of the product that I'm developing, the target population that will benefit from that product, the way of administration, whether it is a product for injection or oral delivery product or a topical product. All those parameters actually help me to define what are the quality attributes that I need to have in hand in order to ensure that all the product characterization can be, or the product parameters can be met by those methods that I develop and the ranges of the limits that I will establish. Process and analytical strategy is another stage in the design phase. Process description, unit operations, materials, scale, equipment, set points ranges, materials flow, sampling in process controls, hold times, yields, all that needs to be discussed and defined during this stage of development. The same for analytical methods. If I have a product that needs to be sterile, I need to have a sterility method to verify that. I need to have, if it's an injectable, I need to understand that the pH and osmolality of that injectable and the withdrawable volume. All those are parameters that I need to develop for them analytical methods in order to ensure that the product is appropriate for the intended use and it is safe for the end user. And knowledge management. I start building databases in order to collect data from which I will evaluate whether the process that I developed is appropriate or not, whether I have deviations, whether I establish ranges which are not appropriate for the product. All those things need to be understood during the phases, the stage 1 and 2, so that when I get to stage 3, I have the database with robust data, with statistical tools that will help me understand what are those parameters which I need to follow in order to understand and in order to keep the control over the process and the product. Risk assessment I mentioned already, and I am coming back. Risk assessments are in the interdisciplinary and iterative. Parameter designations should be clearly defined and consistent within the organization. If variability in process parameters could impact a critical quality attribute, it is treated as a critical process parameter. The example that I gave before about the pH, that is the meaning of that. If there is a process parameter that if I change its performance, the critical quality, the quality attribute will change because of that, or I will not get at the end of the day a product that meets its specifications, then it means that this is a critical process parameter and I need to ensure that it behaves as it should. Risk assessment outputs guide process characterization, PPQ, sampling, and continuous process verification monitoring. So if through the risk assessment, I identify a process step which I still don't have control over its performance, this is a process parameter that I will continue the follow-up on it through the stage 3 until I have established a robust and consistent outcome at this stage. Process parameters should be varied during the design of the process in order to understand the effect on product quality attributes and performance. That is during the design, there is the term design of experiments and design space. That means that you develop a series of tests by which you challenge different parameters, these different process parameters and different quality attributes. And once you have compiled all the data, you can define what are the parameters and the ranges by which the process is effective and can be performed. That is the design space. And as long as you behave or manufacture your product within the design space, you know that the outcome of that will be a product that is that meets its acceptance criteria. So you need to define also the proven acceptable ranges and the critical process parameters and material attributes during that process. So at the end of stage 1, the delivers for PPQ readiness are a quality target product profile, which you started with that at the beginning of the design process, and you may adjust that once you end this stage 1 process with additional information and knowledge that you have gathered. The critical quality attributes and criticality assessment, manufacturing process design, process deviations, and relevant CAPAs implemented. That is actually not so much from the guideline, that is from our experience. There are companies that initiate the PPQ and without looking back at all the batches that they manufactured until that stage, which serve for preclinical and clinical studies, and to look at deviations that happened during that during the manufacturing of those batches. And we had an experience with a company that started the PPQ, and the first PPQ batch failed in one of the purification steps. And when they looked back, they actually realized that during the manufacturing of the clinical batches, they had a similar deviation for which they didn't define the correct kappa, and therefore they didn't resolve the problem because they thought they had that deviation once in the clinical batches, so it's not such an issue. But unfortunately, it repeated itself during the process qualification, which actually was a challenge how to justify that. And thanks to the fact that it was the first PPQ batch, they manufactured the fourth PPQ batch, and they justify the inclusion of that batch as part of the PPQ. So that is important to understand. You need to look back at the history that you have collected and see if there is something that you need to implement before you initiate your PPQ. You need to have analytical methods established and qualified. At this stage, also validated, because you need to have tools that you can rely on them in order to ensure that the results are appropriate. And you will have at this stage also the initial risk assessment of the process that we will continue developing it with new information. Process characterization also will be available, scale up or scale down rationale for the validation of different processes which you cannot validate at scale, so you develop scale down down models in order to assist you validating those stages. A process design report, and you need to develop a process validation master plan, which will be with you from that moment through the life cycle of the product, and commercial process control strategy. So readiness to PPQ is not just a checkbox exercise, it is an evidence review. Do we have enough process understanding to qualify the commercial process? Now we are moving to stage 2, which is the process qualification. Or everything that is part of the process qualification should be already qualified and ready to move forward. Facilities, utilities, equipment, instruments should be suitable, capable, and robust and reliable in order to be qualified before the PPQ. The qualification reduces equipment performance as a process variable. And that is a justification why you need the qualification, but also it is a requirement. You cannot move to PPQ before you have all your equipment qualified, fully qualified, and I will discuss what does it mean to have the equipment fully qualified. Process performance qualification, combined qualified system, trained personnel, commercial process, control procedures, and components to produce commercial batches and confirm the process design. You need to have in mind that when you move to the process qualification, in theory, those batches can go to be your first commercial batches. So you need to ensure that they meet all the requirements of a product that goes to the market. The design of qualification aligns the system with process requirements and control strategy. I will move forward because I have 2 slides that are a bit more detailed. Design of a facility and qualification of utilities and equipment. This is a pre-requirement to enter into a process qualification. A qualification of utilities and equipment includes generally URS, user requirement specifications, or DQ, design qualification, IQ, installation qualification, which at that stage you ensure that the utility systems and equipment are built and installed in compliance with the design, and that all the equipment is calibrated at this stage. OQ, operational qualification, verifying that utility systems and equipment operate in accordance with the process requirements in all anticipated operating ranges. This should include challenging the equipment or system functions while under a load comparable to the expected during routine production. It should also include the performance of interventions, stoppage, and startup as is expected during routine production. Operating ranges should be shown capable of being held as long as would be necessary during routine production. So if I have an equipment that its purpose is to keep the product at a certain temperature for 10 hours during the process, then I need to challenge that equipment during the qualifications phase, and you can do that with water or some other solution that reflects your product. And you need to ensure that at least for 10 hours, the temperature is kept as you have defined, and there are no fluctuations in the temperature, which is for this step a critical process parameter. Qualification of utilities and equipment should be covered under individual plans as defined in the VMP. So if you need to provide to your facility water for injection for some processes, the water for injection manufacturing facility, if that's what you have in your facility, needs to be qualified to manufacture the water for injection and keep it at the conditions of use either if it is at high temperature or at room temperature, whatever are the needs for your process, you need to ensure that that is available before you get into the process qualification. So a PPQ readiness means that you have updated your quality target profile and confirmed CQAs, critically assessment for attributes and materials, approved commercial process description. I will not read everything because I have like 5 minutes to finish everything. PPQ risk assessment report should be available, and PPQ approved protocols should be available. And the question here is, are the intended commercial process control samples and decisions defined before execution starts? PPQ protocols should be approved before the study begins and should include how data will be analyzed. That is an important aspect that you need to take into account, and that is being discussed also in the technical report. Number of PPQ batches is something that you should justify. It's not 3 because that is what we had in the past. It should be justified. An enhanced sampling should provide the insight into within batch and between batch variability. So you need to have a sampling plan that will be more than what you will do for routine batches that you will manufacture in the future. You need to have a protocol that addresses you should have a protocol that discuss the purpose and scope, study strategy, references, equipment, material, responsibilities, acceptance criteria, sampling, deviation, statistical analysis and reporting approach. The execution is the manufacture of commercial scale batches using qualified system, as we already mentioned, and most importantly, trained personnel, so that the operators that will run the process were trained, they have experience with the process, they have manufactured it already, they have been trained on the protocol, they have been trained on the batch record of the PPQ batches, so that you minimize the risks that something will go wrong. And the report should summarize all the data, deviations, and conclusions. If there were deviations during the execution phase, you need to justify why you consider the PPQ to be valid and ready to transition to stage 3, continuous process verification and regulatory submission like NDA, BLA, MMA, depending on the product and the authority to which you are going to submit. Continued process verification is the stage 3, and what the technical report recommends is what FDA also has in its guideline for process validation, to divide stage 3 into 2, 3A and 3B, while the protocol for 3A actually talks about how many batches you will manufacture until you feel that you have a robust process that you can really rely on its results. And then for the stage B, you can continue monitoring the process, but you can reduce the control. You can change the strategy so that it has not so many requirements for monitoring, but you have identified the process is robust and that there are almost no variations in the way the process behave and is executed. During the stage 3B, you can also look at opportunities for improvement. It means that maybe you can change your sampling plan to reduce sampling plan because you have enough data to ensure that if you test only those parameters and not all of the parameters that you have been tested until now, you have a good picture of the quality and performance of the process. You also may decide that you every 10 or 20 batches, you do a full sampling of the batch, but for other batches, you reduce the sampling. And what you need to keep in mind is that the continuous process verification is a practical mechanism for sustaining process knowledge after launch. And for instance, one of the things that regulatory authorities will look at during that stage, or your commitment for this stage, is whether you are going to adjust your acceptance criteria for some different analytical parameters. For instance, if you had for a product until this stage a limit of impurities which is less than 5%, and during the review of the data of your continuous process verification, you realize that actually 99% of the batches are below 3%, regulatory authorities will expect you to adjust the limit according to that. So that is another aspect of monitoring and controlling the process. For this continuous process validation monitoring product, you need to define the roles and responsibilities across the different departments in the facility: manufacturing, quality, process development, analytical. Statistics is really, really important through the entire process validation and process verification. And the regulatory and regulatory people also, because during that stage you may initiate change control and they need to provide you the input whether it is a change that can be executed without prior approval by the authorities, or that you need to ask for that approval before you initiate the change, or you need to provide the change protocol to the authorities in order for them to approve them, and then you can move forward. So all the relevant departments in the manufacturing facility should be involved, including the marketing people. Sometimes we forget that if we make a change, for instance, it may result in delay or in supply of the product after the change. So the marketing people need to be aware of that, and you need to plan that with them, although they are not directly related to the change control and the validation of the change, but they need to understand that there might be a delay in delivery of product to the market. And another aspect is to determine rules for continuous process verification signals. What counts as a signal? Let's say that I manufacture 10 batches, and in one of them, one of the parameters deviates from the range, or deviates from what is typical for other batches. Is one parameter in one batch a signal of something is going on? Do I need to do something about that? who decides whether it is wrong or you can continue working, although there was a signal, something that you defined as a signal, and how you behave in that case, and how you document it so that you have that documented, that when there something happened, that is the way that you need to react to that. And that is something that evolves during the continuous process validation. Interface with the annual product quality review, change control, deviations. Each time that you do an annual product quality review, look at change control during the previous year, look at deviations, look at kappa, and assess whether something in the process changed, whether there is a need to adjust the process, and therefore maybe to revalidate some aspects of that. And an important aspect, or maybe the most important one, is the data science and the collection of all the information in order to understand what the product, how the product behaves. That aspect works against both overreaction to isolated points and under detection of meaningful process drift. So you need to look at that and assess whether you have really an issue here or not, and how to react to that. And as I mentioned earlier, the 3A stage is the verification of the design space. You define how many batches you want to follow during that period. You may decide that all the batches that will be manufactured during the first half year after the process qualification will be part of the 3A stage. And at the end of this stage, you will collect all the data and then decide whether you have the conditions under control, and there are no things that you need to address because the process is reproducible and under control. And then you may move to stage B, in which 3B, in which you monitor the process, and you need to have a monitoring plan defined already, so that you can have tools in order to continuously review your process. I think that we are at the end of the presentation, and we can summarize that. Here are some other systems and principles that will help you with the evaluation of the process, the quality risk management statistic, knowledge management, and process analytical technologies or digital tools that may assist you. And this slide actually summarizes all of that. We start with the define quality, understand variables, characterize them, DIE models, PAV and no parameters, confirm system qualification, PPQ, monitor during the continuous process verification, and improve through change control and the knowledge updates. So every stage produces knowledge that should change the way the next stage is planned, is of course if relevant, and actually the challenge here is to identify the relevant knowledge and react accordingly. So I think that I will stop here. I think that we cover everything. As I mentioned, it is a long document with a lot of information, which if you have the chance to have that and review those sections that are relevant to you and the operation in which you work. It will provide you with a lot of additional knowledge and aspects that not always are gathered in the document. And I really thank PDA for providing that knowledge to us. And I thank all the participants for staying with us.
Thank you very much. We do have one question from Omer Lustgarten. Hi, Omer. Omer is asking, is the CQA the attribute that needs to remain in a certain range in the end product, for instance, purity, and the CPP, the process parameter that you monitor, like pH, that you know will affect the attribute?
Yes, that's a way of, it's not always that the CQA will have an impact on the range of at the end of the product, meaning at the certificate of analysis. It may affect the next process as well. The idea is that the critical quality attribute, it's something that you need to ensure that it is within its range in order not to interfere with the continuous process and or the quality of the product and affect the CPP. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you for a fascinating webinar. And for our audience, if we recommend that you acquire the technical report, and if you need any assistance in implementing it or any support, please feel free to contact us. I sent you my email on the chat, and you will receive the presentation with our contact details as well. I wish you Chag Shavuot Sameach and good afternoon and goodbye to everybody. Thank you again.
Thank you.